Over the years, I've heard many sermons preached on the familiar story of Martha's dinner party that is recorded in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. I preached several sermons on this incident throughout my ministry. Basically, all these sermons, including my own, have been highly critical of Martha's attitude and behavior. Martha always seems to get a bad press. My response to such sermons has been to feel weighed down by a burden of guilt and conviction, followed by writing a note to myself in large, bold, capital letters, which I put in a prominent place in my study. Be a Mary, not a Martha. So for the next week or two, as I went about my busy ministry in the parish, I tried to be like Martha's sister, Mary. In my early morning devotions, I'd sit quietly in the Lord's presence and listen to His voice. But soon the phone would ring. The email inbox would fill up. Someone would knock on the study door. After dealing with all these things, I noticed on my desk the to-do list. And I panicked, because I didn't have enough time in the day to get everything done. Before long, I'd be driving to my first appointment, frantically visiting parishioners at homes, hospitals and nursing homes, dashing from one meeting to another, having interviews with couples to prepare them for weddings, meeting with families to organize funerals, as well as catching up with snail mail and preparing for church services. Even the front passenger seat in my car resembled an office desk, with mobile telephone, earpiece, don't tell the police, notebook, pens, parish roll, and other bits and pieces. Often in the evening, when we had guests for dinner, I ate quickly, and after dessert, not waiting for coffee, I quietly excused myself and rushed out of the house on my way to the next engagement. By the time I arrived home, our visitors had long gone, and the family were all in bed, sound asleep. As it was too late for any conversation, I'd lie down on the settee in the snug to watch Litline on the ABC to catch up with the day's news. Within a few minutes, I too was fast asleep. I'd waken up with a start at 2 a.m., confused with the television still on. As I staggered to my bedroom, I might as well have waved goodbye to being like Mary. The Martha syndrome within me was well and truly back. It is appropriate that I meditate on this story of Mary and Martha this morning, because this past week, as I reflected further on this story, in the midst of preparing 4 sermons, conducting 3 funerals, attending 12 meetings, fulfilling 6 engagements, visiting 3 parishioners in their homes, and 1 in hospital in the intensive care unit, checking numerous emails, I think about 60 in total, and dealing with a host of other administrative and pastoral matters, it suddenly struck me that Martha wasn't such a misdirected girl after all. Maybe she's been unfairly criticized. Perhaps all she needed was a microwave and a dishwasher. Sure, she didn't have her priorities in the right order, but just hold on for a minute. Remember this. If it hadn't been for Martha, no one in the house that day would have eaten. Some of you wise parishioners advise me from time to time to slow down and take things easier. A bit hard in the week just past, but generally speaking, that's your advice. One thing which I trust has characterized my ministry at the St. Andrew's Pastoral Charge is my high work ethic. It's something I think was part of my family, and it has just been handed down. I endeavour to pack as much as I possibly can into each day, starting at 5 a.m. and working until late at night. I'm left to consider the possibility that the Martha in me is a gift, provided, of course, I use it for good and not for guilt. Let's just take a moment to reflect on Martha. Wouldn't you love to go to her house for dinner? She would be such a generous hostess. Everything would be so well prepared and presented, and the food so delicious. If I ask this congregation, how many people identify with Martha? I suspect that the vast majority of you would raise your hand. I'd be glad about that, because at least I wouldn't be on my own. Martha had some highly commendable personality traits. In her favor, she had the gift of hospitality. She opened her heart and her home to Jesus, even though she knew very little about him. It was Martha, not Mary, who extended the invitation. Let's remember that. Martha had a servant's heart and a teachable spirit. We know this because when Jesus corrected her, she took it in the right spirit. Martha was a woman of action, whose biggest shortcoming was her self-righteous complaining about her sister Mary. Martha made the big mistake of measuring her sister Mary according to her own standard. Jesus encounters Martha's frustration with Mary by replying tenderly. And we have the words in Luke chapter 10, verses 41 and 42. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha. Notice how he emphasizes her name. Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. One thing is needful. Mary has chosen the good portion, which shall not be taken away from her. When you look at this story closely, you will notice that Jesus never once told Martha to become like Mary. He told her not to worry about unimportant matters. Jesus didn't order Mary to help Martha. That's another interesting point in the story. But neither did he order Martha to stop serving and sit at his feet. Preparing the dinner was a necessary and valuable service. But Martha's grumbling detracted her from her good deed. Now let's try and be fair to Martha here. It wasn't that there was anything intrinsically wrong with her or what she was trying to do. She just needed an attitude adjustment. Let me for a moment be personal. Perhaps I need an attitude adjustment too. To be honest, I realized that I needed this 3 years ago, just prior to my long service leave. I really felt that I needed it, and to take all of it at the same time. I'd come to that point in my Christian ministry and even in my Christian life where I just had really enough. And I needed to get away for a period of time and rediscover who I really was and try to assess my priorities in life and in ministry. I made a number of changes, and I introduced those when I returned to Newcastle. And since coming to Canberra, I've tried to implement some more of these changes to my ministry style. I reckon that more changes need to be made. I can juggle several things at once, which I trust gives me the opportunity to serve the needs of my parishioners. But I have a tendency to take on too much. And maybe you've already guessed that. One thing I have not been good at in my ministry is saying no. The result is I have become overstretched and therefore less effective in some areas in my ministry. That's the Martha syndrome in me. Recently, I've had to question my motives. Was I serving the Lord, or was I serving myself? Was I relying on my own strength or the Lord's strength? Was I driven or called? And if I was driven, who was in the driver's seat? As I ran around my large geographical parish like a headless chicken, a wave of conviction hit me. There I was, helping everybody else with their problems. But alas, I was neglecting my own. After my convicting moment, I asked God to do some pruning in my ministry. As a result, I've cut out some ministry commitments, particularly those outside my parish work, all of which were worthy and worthwhile. But they had to go. I've sought to the best of my ability to get a better balance between work and family. And maybe it's too late now for me because my family have all fled the nest. They've all gone from home. Maybe there was a missed opportunity. though I'm very thankful that all my family are keen Christians. I hope I'm still able to adequately serve the needs of this pastoral charge without neglecting my family when I do have the opportunity to spend time with them. But I hasten to confess that my attitude needs some further adjusting. Martha was given a revelation. She realized the point of having guests in her home wasn't to win the cleanest kitchen award, but rather to enjoy their company. Poor old Martha substituted fellowship with Jesus and the other disciples for a sink full of dishes. She should have let the dishes soak. A busy Christian housewife once said, "A peanut butter sandwich served with loving calm tastes a lot better than any made from scratch meal prepared by a stressed out Martha." Think about that. If truth be told, most, if not all of us, display the Martha syndrome. It's not that there is anything wrong with what we do in our Christian service. It's just that we get things out of proportion. This weekend is the end of the school holidays. Many people have been able to have a break and enjoy a well-earned rest. And it would appear amongst our younger families as if they're continuing to take the last day or two before the end of the holidays. A holiday provides us with some time and space to get into a reflective frame of mind, to engage in some critical self-examination of our priorities in life, and to have an audit on our spiritual life. This service of worship this morning provides us with the opportunity to be quiet for a few moments, to get away from the hustle and bustle of the busyness of a typical day at work. Here in this church, we can sit at the feet of Jesus, hear his word read, and listen to him speaking to us before we leave the service and prepare to return to the duties at work tomorrow in what promises to be another hectic week. Perhaps the lesson we need to learn today is that most of us are like Martha. Certainly, I am. I suspect that probably very few of us, if we're really honest about it, are like Mary. The problem I have with all the sermons I've heard on this familiar story is that all the preachers challenged me to be a Mary instead of a Martha. And indeed, in my own sermons on the story, I scolded my listeners for being like Martha when they should have been like Mary. I was wrong to do this. The reality for me is that I will always be a Martha. I know that I will never be a Mary. I might somehow manage to be a Mary for a day or two, but honestly, it isn't me. I live every day with the Martha syndrome. I cannot help being who I am. Neither can you. If we exhibit Martha characteristics, so be it. Rather than striving to be like Mary, we can be the best of Martha. That is, the transformed Martha with the servant's heart and teachable spirit. The Lord has made us who we are. We cannot change this. Don't even try. If you, like me, are a Martha, please don't try to be a Mary. You'll never succeed anyway. And in any case, none of us is being asked to make the change. I'm glad about that, because don't forget, if it hadn't been for Martha, no one in the house would have eaten. So when you think about it, there's not that much wrong with the Martha syndrome after all. Amen.